The following is a quarantine recording presented to you in around sound. It was recorded with whatever was lying around.
Lady don't take no shit, insist on respect the sister, walk around like a womanish. She won't speak unless it's something worth saying, don't play. The girl take herself so seriously, people stare curiously. She got a natural way, her hips sway furiously. Yeah, the luxuriously, carries herself like the cutest, most prettiest thing you see this side of the bay.
Hey, this is Lady Don't Take No, your weekly roundup of all of the real and none of the fake. I'm your host, Alicia Garza. This show is pro-Black, pro-queer, proudly feminist, and pro-do what you like. Every week, you're going to get the best of what goes on in my head, what we're loving on and what we hating on, what we might be and what we ain't gonna do. Politics, pop culture, pandemic policing of vaccine distribution that isn't grounded in what's at stake. We cover it all. We are recording from Oakland, California, the center of the known universe, where we are dealing with Rona and reconstruction. It's a challenging time, a changing time. It's a time of transformation. It's all the things all the time nowadays, but we're going to help you understand the dynamics of this time every single week. So be sure to tune in, tell a friend, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We do it for the culture, so the pod is free 99 because we know that with a country in chaos, the least we could do is keep you from putting your money anywhere else than where it's needed.
She digs Angela Davis, Alice Walker, Nikki Giovanni, or honey. Says she wanna be a doctor, and not that someday I'm sure she'll be teaching somebody.
Our guest this week is literally one of my favorite human beings on earth. On earth, I'm telling you, on earth. Our guest this week has been an activist, a writer, and a strategist focused on women's rights and racial justice since the 1960s. She co-founded the Women of Color Resource Center, and she served as National Research Director and Senior Advisor with me at the National Domestic Workers Alliance for nearly a decade. She is currently working on a book which is an evaluation of the engagement of social justice forces in the 2020 elections. Oh my God, I love that. I want that book. Hurry it up. She is a mentor, and it is a gift that she is with us on the pod today. Please, please, please welcome Linda Burnham. Hi, Linda.
Hey, Alicia, how are you?
I'm so happy to see your face.
And I'm happy to be here. This is my very first podcast. Hello.
Oh my gosh, what an honor for me. I'm glad that I could introduce you to the podcasting world. This is my first pod too. Well, the first pod on my own, I should say. And I'm loving it. And I'm glad that you are now a part of the Lady Don't Take No family.
Hey.
Linda, I gotta ask you, okay, so contrary to popular opinion, like what's going on in Texas, where Governor Abbott just repealed all the mask laws and was like, by the way, every business is open now. What the fuck? Unlike that kind of nonsense, we are actually still in a pandemic. It is good to keep wearing your mask. I gotta ask you, as somebody who has been diligently following quarantine, what has your quarantine life been like? And have you developed any unique habits, live and direct, from Miss Rona?
Yeah, this past year has been pretty amazing and unprecedented. And for an old girl, I feel like I'm learning a lot. You know, wins and losses, but a lot of losses.
Mm-hmm.
So Corona has taught me how to grieve over Zoom. So that's a talent I didn't know I wanted or needed.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been to too many Zoom memorials. Yeah. So that's something that happens when you're in quarantine.
That's right.
Another thing that happens, though, is, you know, you spend more time in your garden.
Yes.
You spend more time with people who are very close in, and that's a good thing. And one of the positives of Zoom, I'll also say, is We do a weekly family Zoom on Sundays.
Yeah.
And so, I have family scattered around the country. And so I get to be in conversation with nephews and nieces who ordinarily I'd see a couple times a year. So that's fabulous because we get to catch up with each other and check in and do a Black History Month check in and all of that. So that part's been real good.
Are you developing any new skills? I mean, I remember in the beginning of this, right? People were like, oh, it's all DIY all the time. People were baking bread. They were planting gardens. I learned how to do my own nails, like Japanese hard gel kind of nails, it was like a real serious thing. So, give us the scoop on your pandemic skills in case we enter into the apocalypse. And I think we might already be here. I just need to know what you bring into the table.
Okay. Well, I like to cook anyway. So, yeah, I've done a fair amount of cooking.
Well
I
done.
tried the whole, what is it called? Kombucha? I tried the kombucha thing. My niece sent me through the mail this growing thing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then I added tea. And then I had this huge thing growing in my kitchen. And then you had to feed it. And then you had to decant it. And oof. And then it tasted okay, but not fabulous.
I see.
So that was a skill that possibly I could have cultivated over time, but nah, I gave that up.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I still have a sourdough starter in my refrigerator. And I keep swearing to myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I tried twice last year, and it always ended with Malachi being like, what is this thing that is growing on the counter? Can it go outside? I don't feel good about this.
Well, you're reminding me, I did the sourdough thing too.
Did you succeed?
Well, I succeeded in making a loaf or two of bread, and then I felt like, wow, if you spent a lot of time doing this, you could get good at it. But number one, you don't have a lot of time. And number two, then you'd have all this bread all over the house, which you don't need. So I had to let that go too.
Oh my God, I love that so much. I mean, I love me some bread too, but I also enjoy having it delivered to my house, not making it. So there's that on that. I have been telling people in my life lately, because, we did just survive Black History Month, which, drives me crazy because people are always talking about the past. And I'm like, we have a lot to talk about in terms of our future. It's important too. So look, I've been saying to people in the gazillion conversations that I did last month that it's important to have people in your life from different generations so that you can see more clearly where you've been, where you are now, and where you're going, or where you need to go. You get where I'm going with this. At least once a day, Linda, I think about a question that I want to ask you. You're very lucky that I don't actually ask all of them to you. I would probably drive you bananas. But I want to get a sense from you how important it is to have more of a full-throated approach to how we build movement. And some of that is very much about how we build with our people. So give me a sense. What do you think? What do you think in this realm of things?
The cross-generational thing is really interesting. And I feel like this is one of the places where I learned a lot from my mom. And one of the ways that I learned was she's 106.
Oh my gosh.
She'll be 106 on March 22nd.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So that's a really long life. And when you live a really long life like that, you deal with a lot of loss. You lose most of your cohort. So one of the things that I learned from my mom is you got to make friends. You have to keep making friends. You have to keep making new relationships in your life, bringing new people into your life, and figuring out how to love them, even if you didn't know them when you were, 12 years old. So I feel like there's that model, which is a really important one. And then I feel like the other thing I would say about this is that I had some also important modeling from people who were in politics a generation or two before me, who were my elders.
Mm-hmm.
And I had both positive and negative relationships. The positive, yeah. So on the positive side, there were folks who could see me, could see what I was trying to do, could see that some of it was, wrong-headed or straight crazy or whatever, but still stayed in conversation, still were open to helping us figure out what we were doing in the world, that kind of thing. And then I also remember there was another person that I tried to engage who was a generation older, maybe my mom and dad's generation. And I went to sit down for a meeting, and this was, I was trying to sort out what's the landscape of left politics and relationships. And this person said to me, "You're in a lost battalion."
A what?
In a losing war on a non-existent front.
Ooh, that was a read, honey. That was a read for the ages. I would like to deliver that read one day.
Right? So possibly that person was correct, but that wasn't really the message that I needed.
Yeah.
It really disoriented me in a pretty profound way. And then, later it taught me something, which is in the cross-generational thing for the elders, of which I am one, you have to be able to put yourself in a position to learn, to be willing to learn for people who are from generations down and engaging in different ways. You have to also know which fights to pick and which fights possibly they're not ready for because they don't have the experience. So why pick the fight if it's not going to go anywhere? Even if you see things differently, it could be the case that whoever you're in conversation with, if they're 20, 30, or even 40 years younger than you are, then they have some experience possibly to get under their belts before they're ready to engage in whatever that conversation is. And then I think the other piece is, which I know is really hard for people. I mean, hard for old people generally. Don't be crabby. Do your crabby stuff somewhere else, and don't be resentful because you're not, where you thought you should be. The world is a tough place. So wherever you are is where you are. So just work with that and keep it moving.
I am thinking a lot lately about being somebody who is in the middle of generations. Like, I think once you hit your 40s and 50s, you kind of start to have stronger, if you didn't have them already, you start to have stronger relationships with people who've been around longer than you. And you also have started to build relationships with people who are just coming in. And you're kind of in this interesting intersection, right? Where you have a lot of stuff in common with the folks who have been around longer than you. You're trying to figure out what you have in common with the people who are coming up after you. And it's an opportunity to kind of model, right? How you become a good elder at some point. I want to know from you, what is your secret to strong relationships across generations? So in other words, what are OGs, and you know how I feel about OGs, mid-Gs, and young Gs, right? So what did the OGs get wrong and get right about my generation from your perspective? And what did the mid-Gs like myself get right and wrong about your generation?
I think the old Gs sometimes are not prepared to question deeply enough, where we went wrong and what was just wrong about what we did. And then there's also sometimes kind of a glamorization of the 60s and 70s. And having lived through that period, there was a lot of stuff that was terrific and a lot of stuff that was really shaky. And, you have to choose where you have those conversations, but we do also have to be honest about what we got right and what we got completely wrong. Otherwise, what's the point? For my generation, it was there was also a period through the 80s and into the early 90s where the progressive movement and the left was kind of in a deep ebb. So new activists were not coming forward. We were like deep in the Reagan years. And you can see this in kind of the demographics of the movement as it's currently shaped. And so at that point, I felt like my job, and now I'm talking about when I'm in my 40s and 50s, my job was to figure out how to leave some crumbs in the forest and hope some people came along, leave a trace of what you were trying to do, what you did, why, the thinking behind it, what you feel like you accomplished, so that when folks come along and they have questions, there's a trail. And folks did come along. What do you think about that? Fabulous.
I'm like, hi, I found you.
Yeah, it was kind of grim there for a while, I'll say. And, people did what they had to do, people of my generation. I mean, I also feel like I was really lucky in a lot of ways that I was able to stay engaged politically, but that is partly kind of constitutionally who I am, but it's also luck. I had good health because I didn't have a health insurance on what I was making.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't have big family obligations because my family was also pretty healthy. So I could stay in the work without a lot of resources. And that was a gift. That was a gift that I was able to do that. A lot of other people went off and got real jobs, where they could make real money so they could take care of their children, or they went into academia or whatever. People made the choices they needed to make when the movement kind of faded. Yeah. So I think in terms of what the young G's maybe, I'm not a young G, so I don't know, but what young G's maybe get wrong about old G's is, some people see an old person and they don't necessarily think there's much there. Do you know what I mean? I mean, as an old Black woman, believe me, I've had the experience of people just looking straight past me, like not really a being on the planet. That's what happens when you get old. And I think it happens doubly when you're old and Black. So I think for the younger G's, it's like, open your eyes and see what might be there. At least do the exploration, ask the questions.
And what do you think the young G's are getting right in this moment?
Oh, so much. So much young G's are getting right. It feels like a blessing to have been around for long enough to see the ways in which folks have kind of taken up, especially the work around police violence. It just feels like getting that on the agenda in a way that it just was not on the agenda before, where, whole period, centuries, really, to be frank, where people could ignore it, act like it wasn't happening. It wasn't part of anybody's consciousness. So I feel like it's a huge leap in public consciousness, the awareness that police violence, state violence, mass incarceration is a reality in this quote unquote democracy. So what is that saying about who we are? That awareness is new. And that awareness has been brought to us by young G's. So all power to the young G's.
Come on. There's a lot of people who I imagine are listening right now and saying, I really want to make sure that the people in my life are engaged, inspired. And if you're somebody who kind of comes from a justice background, right? what can often happen, I think, is that for those of us who see this as like our path and our work, sometimes our offspring, the people that we are in horizontal relationships with, or even, just one step removed, they're like, yeah, that work's not for me. Now, when I think about your family and your lineage and your history, I know that you come from a long line of badass freedom fighters. I mean, you just told us your mom's is going to be 106 this year. And she, really kind of has been doing so much work for so long to make sure that Black people could be free. Your pops, really like cultivating and crafting communication vehicles for Black folks to reimagine the possibilities of what freedom could look like. Do you have any tips about your upbringing, your present, right? And how you might talk to some of the parents and siblings out there about how to make sure that justice runs in your family and that people aren't running away from the justice work?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is another place where I feel that I was really lucky.
Mhm.
Yeah, I grew up in a household in which politics was just a part of life.
Mm.
But that was combined with the fact that I grew up in a really loving and nurturing household.
Mm.
And I grew up in a household in which I never felt like I was being forced into politics and I was being loved for whoever it was I was turning out to be.
Mhm.
So I
Mm.
think that's part of it. I turned to politics really early on. I was in, I don't know, junior high school when I went to my very first, like, I'm going to this alone
Mhm.
anti-war demonstration.
Mhm. I love
But
that.
yeah, but I had been in a left political environment growing up, you know, all those years. And, I have a daughter now, and she's not active in the way that I am. She's got great politics and a progressive outlook, but she's not devoting her life to politics. And that's okay.
Mhm.
That's all good. So if your people, your siblings, your children choose to take this path, that's all good. And if they don't, and they're decent human beings who are making the world a better place in whatever way they're making it a better place, that's good too.
She don't like violence, but she can throw them things, so don't let your guard down.
It is Women's History Month.
Mm.
I know. We gonna do this, okay? Linda, you have been a Black feminist for a long time. And I'm sure that you have seen Black feminism shift over time. And I hope I'm not being too negative here, but I also do feel this way. I'm going to own my feelings. In the same way, I feel like there's good stuff about Black History Month and there's things that annoy me. There is good stuff about Women's History Month and things that annoy me. So instead of leaning into the things that annoy me, I'm going to lean into the things that I think are helpful in terms of reshaping a world that has been hindered, frankly, by rigged rules that leave some of us out and some of us behind to the detriment of everybody. So, talk to me a little bit about what you have seen in terms of the positive shifts in Black feminism. And why do you think those shifts have been positive when you look at kind of what we're grappling with today?
Yeah, I don't hate on Women's History Month because as I came up in the various and sundry different organizations I was in, Third World Women's Alliance, Women of Color Resource Center, Alliance Against Women's Oppression, Black Sisters United, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, come on.
We used March 8th, which we called International Women's Day. I'm going to come back to that. And the month to do a particular kind of work that we might not have done otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that work was like embodied in like an International Women's Day celebration or something. So the point of that was to bring community together to collectively be in conversation about what was going on for women in the community, in the country, and in the world. and to expose folks to women who were doing fabulous work in other parts of the world, I don't know, speaker from wherever, South Africa, Brazil, Nicaragua. So there were elements of work that we could get done either on March 8th or in that month that possibly would not have been done otherwise. So I don't hate on March 8th or the month. And then in terms of the question about Black feminism, first of all, I didn't call myself a feminist for I don't know how long, just because there's a long backstory to this, but it felt like feminism was kind of owned by white middle-class women. And it was really hard to kind of chop your way through that and get to a politic and an orientation that spoke to the experiences of Black women. So I've let that fight go, so I'm okay with it. But I think just in terms of the past few years, I think what's come through Black feminism and other kinds of feminism that's really positive is orientation and inclusiveness around gender that just did not exist previously. So the ways in which queerness and transgender and all of the ways in which people behave and identify themselves along gender and sexual orientation lines, all of that is really, I think, exciting just at a human scale. It's like an opening up of humanity that's, probably all these orientations and behaviors way prior to monotheism and quote unquote civilization existed and were recognized and et cetera.
That's right.
But for the past, I don't know how many thousands of years, they haven't been. So that feels like an openness that comes through the 60s opening around civil rights, women's rights, gay and lesbian rights, and then opens out further. And that just feels like a gigantic shift to me.
Hell yeah. It's the right move.
The right move. And look how long it took. Oh, wow. So that says something about us as humans, but that's a whole other story.
Linda, I've had this on my mind for the last month or so, and we're just coming out of a really incredible election cycle. One of the advances that I think our movement has made in this last decade is that we've started to take more seriously the question of electoral organizing. You have been so stalwart in helping people of my generation and your own understand the tasks at hand and why we can't afford to leave any of our hammers in the toolbox, especially as it relates to electoral organizing. And I know I personally have complained to you more than one time about why I just couldn't bring myself to vote for Empire, right? And you've helped me have a different perspective on this question. Now, I started off by saying that we are coming out of one of the most important election cycles, I think, in a generation. We had more people participate in this last set of cycles, both in November in the general and in the Senate runoff in Georgia, than almost any other time in history. And yet now we are back at that familiar place where I think people can fall into despair about their choices and why it may not be working out how they expected, as fast as they expected. And we're just a little over a month into a new administration. So can you help provide some perspective on this? I've been calling this the attack of the snack machine expectations around electoral work. But I'm hoping you can provide some perspective for people who rightfully so are probably feeling like, where is that change? Where is that building back better that I expected to see so quickly, and I cannot wait any longer for all the good reasons. Help us understand this moment.
Okay. And is Build Back Better the worst?
It is so bad. I
Branding,
hate it so
whoa.
much. But that's why we designed
Who
our
workshopped
mandate.
that?
It wasn't me, trust me. And I tried to get them to change it because, I know a little bit about coining phrases that
Ooh,
really can
that one
galvanize
is
people.
so bad.
But it's why we developed a Build Back Bolder agenda. And we're calling it a Black mandate for the Biden-Harris administration.
There you go.
Yeah, we know what time it is. But anyways, I digress.
Okay. Yeah. To your question, it's a great question. And it's a really important one. For those on the left side of the spectrum, a really important one. And it's really hard to get right. And I will say, when I was a young revolutionary, I was like, why am I voting? I'm not even going to mess with this.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on for far too long. Okay, just to say. And then, like a lot of people, reality kicked me in the butt. So the deal is, if you don't like elections and you don't like the Democratic Party, that's fine as long as you have a coherent path to power that doesn't involve elections.
Mm-hmm.
If you and I can sit down and you can tell me how you're going to accumulate and exercise power while completely avoiding the electoral realm, then I want to hear that conversation. If you don't have an answer, then you have to settle in with how one of the ways, not the only way, but a major way in which power is exercised. And that is through electing people to office and then being on the receiving end of how they govern.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't want to intervene in who governs, more power to you. But what are you doing to change the conditions in which we live? What are you doing that's bringing you more power and that's going to bring about the kind of transformative change that you're looking for that involves completely abstaining from the electoral arena? So that's the conversation. So we can have the conversation, but you got to come with something. And then in the meantime, the other side of this is we're at the beginning of this piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
The left has only now recently 10 to 15 years figured out that, oh, whoops. Whoops. So we're like, I don't know, a decade or two in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now you want to jump off now?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about decades, if not centuries.
Tell the whole truth.
Bearing down on this until you get somewhere, until you get some power, until it's possible. And I'm not saying that has to all go through the Democratic Party. If you have some other way that this can happen, if you have some alternative party, third party, or build the left of the Democratic Party, all of that is up for conversation. But if you're just going to leave power at the city, state, and federal level in the hands of people who are willing to do elections, then we're in trouble.
Listen, that was excellent, Linda. In fact, you just injected me again with the oomph that I needed, because I also think it's important for people to understand it is okay to have fatigue with these systems and processes. I'm tired of these systems. I'm tired of the processes. I'm tired of all the things we have to go through. But I'm so tired of it that it motivates me every day to get rid of the shit and build something better. That's the only time.
Build back better.
That's the only time we should use that phrase, okay? Get rid of the shit and build something better. Not
Correct.
Make the bad shit better. That's not
correct.
That's not getting us many places.
And then we have to understand where we sit in the power spectrum. So when I was I had this conversation also back in 2016 with people who weren't feeling it for Hillary.
I was up in there. Mm-hmm.
You were up in there.
I was up in there.
And so the deal is, yeah, you're going to vote for Hillary. Hopefully we'll get Hillary. And then the next day,
you're going to fight Hillary.
You're going to fight Hillary because Hillary's going to abandon your butt. But she's abandoning your butt because you don't have the power to hold her accountable. Hello. So
that part.
That part. So my hope with Joe Biden is that he's able to move in a toxic political environment, some legislation that creates some space and provides better conditions for some people. Is Joe Biden going to turn into our anti-capitalist, transformative agent?
Absolutely not. Not in your lifetime, my lifetime.
Nobody's lifetime.
Not
least
gonna happen.
Of all his. It's not going to happen. So there's no need for that to be the expectation. The expectation is, what can we do in this political landscape to make sure that 4 years from now, we're not looking at another version of Trump or Ted friggin' Cruz.
Ooh. Or Josh Hawley, the dude from Missouri.
Any of them.
Hello?
Any of them.
Ooh.
So I just want to put a plug in for another piece of work I'm doing, which is on long-term strategy. The other element of why people drop down into despair and cynicism is because a lot of us are not working out of the vantage point of a long-term strategy. And so we're thinking about election cycles or funding cycles or, 6 months, 12 months, 4 years. That's not going to get it. Unless we're thinking, where do we think we can be?
That's right.
A few decades down the road, and how do we get there so that we have more power to enact progressive and left policy that will change our people's condition for the better? Unless we can start to think that far ahead, we're not going to make it.
And just like that, it's time for our weekly roundup of all the things Lady just ain't gonna do this week. So, wait just a goddamn minute. Trump's ass got the vaccine? Now, in this week's news, it was reported that quietly, just like the bitch ass that he is, your ex got the COVID-19 vaccine just before leaving office. Now, y'all know good and damn well, I'm a fan of people getting the vaccine now. Even people who refuse to wear masks and think COVID is a hoax. In fact, I prefer those people take it first because those are the main people putting you and me at risk. But this shit gets on my nerves. I mean, it's proof positive that these people don't believe in what they tell you, especially when it comes to hooking themselves up. Now, remind me, please, not to talk about this clown again for at least 2 more episodes, because we got other people to worry about, like all the people that are more savvy than your ex, but still got the same patterns, child. Other things Lady just ain't gonna do this week is governors who refuse to be grounded in the reality of the type that we deal with here on Earth. So as if Texas hasn't been through enough, this week, Texas Governor Greg Abbott lifted mask mandates statewide and reopened 100% of businesses. All this while more than 7,000 new cases of COVID were counted in the state just this week. It's just awful. These people have a death wish for you and for me. And unfortunately, this is not the only state doing this. Who's at risk? Black and brown communities, frontline workers, the people who are the engine of this country. Shame on those people. Shame on them. Other things Lady ain't gonna do this week is politics as usual. So look, this was a rough week for the Biden-Harris administration. as we learned that Democrats did not push back on the Senate parliamentarian who invoked the Byrd rule to say that an increase in the minimum wage to $15 an hour could not be considered as a part of the reconciliation process for the upcoming stimulus bill, otherwise known as the American Rescue Plan. And now there's been some agreement with Senate Republicans that eligibility for these stimulus checks will be indexed. Now, this is what I've been saying on the pod for a minute. Republicans have no plan for how it is that millions of people will finally get relief from, well, their own incompetence. People need real relief, and they need it now. And Black voters delivered you the power to fucking get it done. So get it done. Fun fact, this Byrd rule that people keep talking about, it's named after the person who came up with the shit. Robert Byrd, who was a Democratic senator out of West Virginia. Byrd was the longest-serving senator in United States history and almost the longest-serving senator in Congress, and he was definitely one of the most powerful. He was preceded by Strom Thurmond, who was a notorious racist who served as a Democrat for years until he switched parties. Byrd campaigned against the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And though apparently to some he changed his views on race later on in his career, somewhat, this rule reeks of some Jim Crow type bullshit. Other fun fact, Vice President Kamala Harris has the power to override that bullshit rule without having a supermajority of votes. Ladies' wish for this week is that Democrats would learn how to use power for the overall good of everybody. There's too much bullshit romanticism of archaic rules that leave real people out and real people behind. More on this soon, but if you're mad as hell right now, like me, call your United States Senator and let them know what you want and when you want it. If you don't know where to start, you can go to the Black Futures Lab's Electoral Action Center at blackfutureslab.org/electoral action center to find out who represents you and how you can get a hold of them. Now, can Lady just rant for a minute? Can we stop already with all this policing of who's getting the vaccine, unless it's white people crossing state lines? I've been seeing some of y'all popping off on social media with your snarky ass comments about people you deem as healthy getting vaccines before people you assume aren't healthy. These are the same people who, when we were traveling, back when, made sure that the Southwest line was in order exactly by number, even though everybody who has a boarding pass that says A1 through A30 is boarding at the same ass fucking time. So let me remind some of y'all, you can't ever tell what people are working with unless they've disclosed their medical history to you and unless you know their situation. Lots of people have lots of risk factors. So unless you're a doctor, spend less of your time worrying about that and more of your time helping everyone you can get the vaccine. Now, literally, some of y'all are spreading misinformation and disinformation. And this is why I long for the days when we were not subjected to every thought a person has ever had that before they didn't have a platform to share them on. And now they do. And they share them often. I saw somebody popping off about their healthy younger friends who work from home getting vaccines while elders are having a hard time getting theirs. Now, vaccines are available to a lot more people than just people who are 65 and older. If you were really as informed as you think you are, you'd know that. Lots of people are working from home because we are in a pandemic. Doesn't take away from the fact that elders are having a hard time getting vaccinated, but that's not always an availability question. It's a distribution question. But also, relax. Your energy is better used helping those elders get vaccine appointments. Did you know if you have severe asthma, you're eligible for a vaccine now? Or if you have HIV or AIDS? Or if you are recently recovering from cancer? Or in some states, if you have a body mass index over 30, you are eligible for a vaccine. Some counties are prioritizing Black and brown people of any age to get the vaccine. Others are partnering with community-based organizations to expand the definition of frontline workers to include tenant organizers, people who work with homeless folks but aren't a part of the public health system. So all that to say, don't be spending your fucking time listening to people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, okay? Volunteer if you can at a vaccine clinic and help make sure everybody gets a vaccine. And read up on eligibility requirements because they're changing regularly, especially as more supply becomes available. Now, child, don't be loud and wrong. Okay. Anyways, let's move to things Lady loves this week. Here's what we want more of. Number 1, Real Housewives of Atlanta. Okay, so besides the fact that Kenya is miserable because her man, she swears wants to get back with her, played her ass and filed for divorce. Okay. Now, the saga is ongoing from Cynthia's bachelorette party, where the ladies found their inner freaks, and Lady is 100% here for it. Because to be honest, this season has been slow moving. Okay. Best line of this week, and I think this came from Desus and Mero, or maybe not, I can't remember now, but it was social justice snatch. And it was referring to the hater-ass Kenya and her big-ass mouth, speculating that Portia put it down on the stripper honey, possibly alongside Tanya, who basically told on herself. I would party with Candy because she knows how to just let things be. Now, these other ladies, hell no. No shade, but also shade. This obsession with telling your partner everything is really for you and it's not for them. Honestly, watching the show this week, I was like, why are you giving up all your business? No doubt this shit is gendered as fuck because honestly, if you're in a straight ass relationship, let me tell you what dudes don't do. Come back from the damn strip club and give you the blow by blow. Now, I myself had a raunchy bachelorette party, and I absolutely 100% did not tell my partner details about my night. Hell, I threw a bachelor party for my partner because theirs got fucked up by some folks they shouldn't have invited in the first place, who also could not handle the dungeon. So, if you are making a decision to spend the rest of your lives together, ain't no need for all of that. Trust me. Anywho, what Lady loves this week is the notion that one day we might free ourselves from shame about being freaky and also from the weird-ass practice of thinking you got to tell your partner everything about everything. You do not. Okay? I am in a, we almost 20 years thick, honey, and I'm telling you, you ain't got to tell everybody everything, and you should not tell everybody everything, especially as it's related to a bachelorette party. Other things Lady loves this week includes more vaccines being rolled out. And this week, Johnson & Johnson announced that its 1-dose vaccine had been approved for emergency use, and the first shipments were being sent to North Carolina. Additionally, President Biden has announced this week that by May, there will be enough vaccines for every adult in the United States. That means all you vaccine police, y'all ain't got to worry no more about your black and brown friends getting vaccinated because you too will get vaccinated within the next 3 months, if you want to. How can people find you? I know the Facebook is not your thing.
No, they can't find me.
Do you want to be found? If you don't want to be found, that's fine too. You know, we had Dream on the podcast, and Dream was like, "No, thank you. I will find you if I'm looking for you."
Yeah, no finding me.
Fair enough.
That's not a thing. I'm not tweeting. I'm not Facebooking. None of that.
Well done. Is there a way that people can follow your project and what you're working on?
I'll get it out to people.
Excellent.
Yeah, you'll see it.
That's what it is.
You'll see
Linda,
it.
we love you so much. Thank you for joining the pod today.
Oh, this has been so much fun, Alicia. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh,
and
we're gonna love this.
We're gonna see each other face to face soon.
No, literally, please and thank you.
I already had my first shot, and I'm gonna have my second one tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, I'm having my second on the 15th.
Oh, we can be in the same place at the same time with no mask.
That's what I'm saying. That's it for Lady Don't Take No. But I'll be back here every single Friday morning to accompany you where you used to have a commute. We appreciate you joining us, and let's keep the conversation going. Tell us what's on your mind, tell us what you like, and tell us what you ain't gonna take no more of. On Twitter, we are at Lady Take. On Insta, we're at Lady Don't Take No Pod. On Facebook, we're at Lady Don't Take No Podcast by Alicia Garza. We post ways to do something about the things you hear about on this show all over our social media. So if we got you amped up today, check out the socials to find out how you can take action. And please give a special shout out to Jahari Farrar for making sure that the people get what they need from our socials. We appreciate you. Please subscribe and write us a review and let the people know what you've heard here today. Our producer is Phil Circus. Our incredible theme is by Latyrix. This pod is supported by the Black Futures Lab. And I am your host, Alicia Garza. Remember, elections and building power are not like a snack machine. You gotta build power in order to exercise power. Wear a damn mask. Still, wear a mask. Vaccines for all. Don't be loud and wrong. And stop telling your partner all your business. That's right. I said it because Lady Don't Take No.
Lady don't take no shit. Insist on respect the sister. Walk around like a womanish. She won't speak unless it's something worth saying. Don't play. The girl take herself so seriously. People stare curiously. She got a natural way. Her hips sway furiously.
Love y'all.
Luxurious. Carries herself.